In the post-apocalyptic world of the Telltale Walking Dead game, chaos reigned as two monstrous creatures clashed in an epic battle that seemed to have no end in sight. The ground shook violently beneath their feet as SCP-682, a glowing green-eyed monster reptile, and Rudy, a massively oversized white baryonyx from Ice Age 3, fought relentlessly. At first, it seemed like a mere clash of titans, but as the battle raged on, it became clear that there was something more sinister at play. The two creatures seemed to be drawn to each other by some inexplicable force, their eyes glowing brighter and brighter with each passing moment. Every strike, every bite, every slash they exchanged only served to fuel their seemingly endless energy and regeneration. The purple energy mist that emanated from their wounds twisted and warped the world around them, turning everything it touched into a nightmarish landscape of twisted trees and crumbling buildings. The air crackled with electricity as the two creatures unleashed their full power, each trying to gain the upper hand in this eternal struggle. As the battle continued, it became apparent that neither SCP-682 nor Rudy would emerge victorious. Their healing and regenerative abilities were too evenly matched, ensuring that the fight would go on for eternity. The world around them trembled and quaked, threatening to collapse under the sheer force of their never-ending clash. Meanwhile, the survivors of the Walking Dead game world watched in horror as the two creatures clashed, unsure of what to make of the apocalyptic spectacle unfolding before their eyes. Some believed the creatures to be harbingers of doom, while others saw them as a chance for salvation in a world ravaged by the undead. As the battle dragged on, alliances were formed and broken, as the survivors struggled to come to terms with the cataclysmic events unfolding around them. Some sought to harness the power of the creatures for their own ends, while others simply tried to survive in a world gone mad. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, it became clear that there was no end in sight for SCP-682 and Rudy. Their eternal clash continued unabated, a never-ending cycle of destruction and rebirth that threatened to consume the entire world in its wake. And so, the survivors of the Walking Dead game world could do nothing but watch in awe and terror as the two creatures fought on, their glowing eyes never wavering, their endless battle shaking the very foundations of reality itself. And as the purple energy mist continued to spread, choking the air and turning everything it touched into a twisted nightmare, it became clear that the fate of the world hung in the balance, caught in the eternal struggle of two unstoppable forces. Pause. In the midst of the chaotic clash between the monstrous SCP-682 and the colossal purple-eyed Rudy, the survivors of the Walking Dead in-game world watched in horror as the battle unleashed unimaginable devastation upon their already bleak reality. Buildings crumbled, trees were uprooted, and the ground shook violently beneath their feet as the two titans relentlessly fought each other with a ferocity that seemed to defy all reason. As the battle raged on, the air filled with the crackling energy of their clash, creating a thick purple mist that obscured the sun and cast an eerie glow over the landscape. The survivors, who had long grown accustomed to the horrors of their world, were now faced with a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Amidst the chaos, a small group of survivors banded together to try and find a way to stop the destructive rampage of SCP-682 and Rudy. Led by a former military officer named Jack, the group consisted of a young mechanic named Sarah, a fearless nurse named Lisa, and a mysterious stranger who called himself simply the Wanderer. Together, they ventured out into the chaos, dodging falling debris and avoiding the relentless shockwaves that emanated from the battling creatures. Jack, with his military training, devised a plan to try and lure SCP-682 and Rudy away from the populated areas of the world, where their clash threatened to destroy everything in its path. Using a combination of stealth and cunning, the group managed to draw the attention of the two monsters away from the survivors' makeshift settlement and towards a desolate wasteland on the outskirts of the world. As SCP-682 and Rudy clashed with each other in a blinding display of power and fury, Jack saw his chance to put his plan into action. Working quickly, the group set up a series of traps and explosives around the battlefield, hoping to incapacitate the creatures long enough for them to make their escape. As the battle reached its peak, with SCP-682 and Rudy locked in a vicious struggle that seemed to have no end, Jack gave the signal to set off the explosives. The resulting explosion rocked the landscape, sending shockwaves rippling through the air and causing the ground to tremble beneath their feet. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle had finally come to an end, as the survivors watched in stunned silence. But then, to their horror, they saw SCP-682 and Rudy rise from the rubble, their bodies battered and bruised but far from defeated. The two monsters turned their glowing eyes towards the survivors, who stood frozen in fear at the sight of the unstoppable force that now faced them. As SCP-682 and Rudy advanced towards them, the survivors knew that they were facing a battle that they could not hope to win. But as they prepared to make their final stand, a voice rang out through the chaos, cutting through the tension like a blade. It was the Wanderer, who stepped forward with a look of determination in his eyes. Drawing a strange, glowing sword from his belt, he faced SCP-682 and Rudy with a steely gaze, ready to confront the monsters that threatened their world. In a sudden burst of speed, the Wanderer launched himself towards SCP-682, his sword flashing with a blinding light as he unleashed a series of lightning-fast strikes against the creature's armored hide. With each blow, the monster recoiled in pain, its green eyes blazing with fury as it tried to fight back. Meanwhile, Jack, Sarah, and Lisa rallied behind the Wanderer, using their skills and weapons to distract Rudy and keep it from interfering in the fight. Together, they formed a united front against the two monsters, determined to protect what remained of their world from destruction. As the battle raged on, the survivors fought with everything they had, their determination and courage shining through the darkness of the chaos around them. With each strike of the sword, each shot fired, they inched closer to victory, even as the monsters continued to unleash their devastating power upon them. And then, in a final, desperate move, the Wanderer unleashed a mighty blow against SCP-682, driving his sword deep into the creature's chest with a strength that seemed to defy all logic. With a deafening roar, the monster staggered back, its green eyes flickering before finally fading into darkness. As SCP-682 fell to the ground, defeated at last, Rudy let out a mournful cry before turning and disappearing into the shadows, leaving the survivors to catch their breath and gaze in wonder at the aftermath of the battle. In the end, the survivors stood united, their world forever changed by the events that had unfolded before them. But as they looked towards the horizon, a glimmer of hope shone in their eyes, knowing that they had faced the unimaginable and emerged victorious, ready to rebuild and forge a new future from the ashes of the old. And so, they set out to do just that, their hearts filled with courage and their spirits unbroken by the trials they had endured. In the midst of the chaos and destruction caused by the eternal battle between SCP-682 and Rudy, a lone survivor named Alex found himself caught in the crossfire. He had been scavenging for supplies in the abandoned city when the ground began to tremble beneath his feet. As he looked up, he saw the two colossal creatures locked in combat, their roars echoing throughout the desolate landscape. Fear gripped Alex's heart as he watched the titans clash, their sheer power and ferocity sending shockwaves rippling through the air. The purple energy mist swirling around them only added to the surreal and nightmarish scene unfolding before him. Desperate to escape the danger, Alex sprinted through the ruined streets, dodging debris and rubble as the ground continued to shake violently. Every step he took brought him closer to the epicenter of the battle, where the two creatures seemed locked in a never-ending cycle of violence. As he rounded a corner, Alex stumbled upon a group of fellow survivors huddled together in a dilapidated building. Their eyes widened in terror as they took in the sight of SCP-682 and Rudy locked in combat just outside their makeshift shelter. "We need to get out of here," one of them whispered frantically. "This fight is tearing the world apart." With a shared sense of urgency, Alex and the other survivors made a run for it, navigating the crumbling cityscape as the ground continued to shake beneath them. Each step felt like a battle against time itself, as the creatures, clash threatened to consume everything in its path. As they reached the outskirts of the city, the survivors found themselves at the edge of a vast forest, its ancient trees towering overhead like silent sentinels. The purple mist from the battle had begun to seep into the foliage, casting an eerie glow over the once serene landscape. Without warning, a new threat emerged from the shadows of the forest, a pack of mutated creatures, their eyes glowing with the same unnatural light as SCP-682 and Rudy. With a chilling howl, they descended upon the survivors, their fangs gleaming in the dim light. Alex and his companions fought bravely, their weapons flashing as they did their best to fend off the savage beasts. But the creatures seemed to be endless in number, their relentless onslaught pushing the survivors to the brink of exhaustion. Just when all hope seemed lost, a deafening roar echoed through the forest, causing the mutated creatures to pause in their attack. From the trees emerged a third creature, unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was a majestic dragon, its scales shimmering with a rainbow of colors and its eyes glowing with a fierce intelligence. With a graceful sweep of its wings, the dragon launched itself into the air, unleashing a torrent of fire that incinerated the mutated creatures in an instant. As the survivors watched in awe, the dragon landed gracefully before them, its gaze locking with Alex's own. In that moment, he knew that they had found a powerful ally in their fight against the forces of darkness. With a silent nod, the dragon turned and soared back into the skies, disappearing into the mist. And as the survivors regrouped and continued on their journey, they knew that they carried with them a newfound hope, a beacon of light in the midst of the encroaching shadows. And so, the battle raged on, but with the dragon's presence, they knew that they would never face it alone. The sun was setting over the apocalyptic world of the Walking Dead in-game world, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The air was heavy with the stench of decay and the distant moans of the undead could be heard in the distance. It was in this eerie setting that something unexpected happened. From high up in the sky, a bright object hurtled towards the ground, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. With a deafening crash, it impacted the earth, creating a massive crater in its wake. Out of the dust and debris emerged two monstrous creatures, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. One of the creatures was a massive, white baryonyx with purple eyes, resembling Rudy from the animated film Ice Age 3. The other was a grotesque reptilian monster known as SCP-682, with glowing green eyes and a bladed tail that resembled a deadly weapon. As soon as they set eyes on each other, the two creatures charged at each other, their jaws snapping and claws slashing in a brutal display of power. Rudy, with his massive size and sharp claws, attempted to overpower SCP-682, but the reptilian monster was quick and agile, dodging his attacks and retaliating with swift strikes from his bladed tail. The ground shook beneath their feet as they clashed, each blow creating shockwaves that rippled through the air. Purple energy mist swirled around them, adding an eerie glow to the scene. Despite their injuries, both creatures seemed to heal and regenerate at an astonishing rate, their bodies glowing with an unnatural light. As the battle raged on, their fighting styles evolved and changed, becoming more brutal and relentless with each passing moment. The air crackled with electricity as the two creatures unleashed their full power, their glowing eyes intensifying in brightness. The ground trembled violently as they continued to clash, the purple mist spreading across the entire Walking Dead in-game world. More creatures began to emerge from the mist, drawn to the epic battle unfolding before them. The clash between Rudy and SCP-682 seemed to transcend time, their endless fight becoming a spectacle of primal power and sheer determination. Every strike, every bite, every slash only seemed to fuel their never-ending battle, creating more purple mist and shockwaves in their wake. As the creatures grew stronger and more formidable with each passing moment, it became clear that their fight would have far-reaching consequences. The very fabric of reality seemed to warp and twist around them, as if unable to contain the sheer power unleashed by their eternal clash. And so, in the heart of the Walking Dead in-game world, Rudy and SCP-682 continued to fight, their glowing eyes locked in a never-ending battle for supremacy. And as the world around them turned purple from their endless clash, it became evident that their feud would shape the fate of the entire universe.